Okay, I am supposedly live. We're going to try this a second time. Again, just like I said before, I may randomly blue screen. This thing may suddenly crash, and I might have like an empty stream running. I have no idea. I have no clue. But we're going to find out, and we're going to try as normal. I was actually, if you ever watched the last stream I did, the first one, I this whole time I'm sitting here looking at I'm using OBS to stream. Um, and apparently, like, the whole time I'm watching it, and it's freaking out, like, it shows a good connection, then a bad connection, then a good connection, then a bad connection. Then I lost it completely, and then I got it back again, and I have moved my hotspot, what do you call it, my internet to a better location where I think now it's showing good. And I listened back to it later, and it turned out that I think the fact that there's a delay allows it to catch up sometimes. So hopefully that is exactly what. Hopefully that works out. But yeah, so really the whole reason I'm going live is just to kind of just do what I did last time and just talk about books I've been reading. And I like to put these out in the 3-minute reviews that I've been doing, but at the same time, it's 3 minutes. Like I have to force myself to try to condense it as short as possible, and that I do that on purpose, of course, because I don't want to waste people's time. I just want to put out some brief thoughts on a book. Do I like it? Do I not like it? What are some good things, bad things? But then there's streams like this where I can just kind of just say whatever, just go on longer tangents about, hey, did I enjoy this? Go into more just stuff. It's just into more detailed things about like little tidbits of things I found out from certain books and that. What do I recommend and just stuff like that. So we're gonna get started. So first, I read Crime and Punishment. I can't remember if I said this on the last stream if I had read the book at that time, but I read Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, and I will get around to doing an actual 3-minute review on that. But until then, I just want to quickly, not even quickly, but just go through that. Reading that like it's one of those books that you've probably heard of it before. I'd be surprised if you've never heard of Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. It's one of those classics that everyone's kind of heard of, but few people have actually read. And this is one that's definitely worth reading. It's a Russian novel, as you could tell from the name, Dostoevsky. It's like the other Russian novels I read. It's very dark. At least when I read Russian novels, there's a very like dark like a very dark atmosphere to the setting. And I haven't read that many Russian novels, but I just find it interesting that of all the ones I've read, they're very dark, and not only that, but they're also like very long. They're very long. Like the Crime and Punishment, 700 pages. But the other ones I've read, like a few thousand even, but they tend to be pretty long. But that's not a bad thing. I found in this one, it is a bit of a slow start. So I would recommend, like, if you read it and you get bored quickly, just go through it. I promise it's worth it. I promise it's worth going through and taking the time to actually read it. Because it does start out kind of like, it's hard to get into it, but then it's very good. It's absolutely fantastic. So what I'm going to do here, before I go any further, is just make sure I'm going to actually do what I didn't do last time and post my stream all over social media. I'm doing it right now during the live stream. I'm going to be on Facebook, facebook.com/LibertyNack, and I'm live on my YouTube channel, if I could spell. Look at this. This is completely unedited. God quality content right here. But yes, anyway, Crime and Punishment. So it's one of those things where as you get further in the book, you realize how good the book is. It's not even that the content itself gets better, but you come to enjoy the overall story as you get further into it. So with Crime and Punishment, there's the idea of it is a very philosophical book. It targets the idea of really, I guess, universality, you could say, to specifically target like the socialist mentality of the time. But in general, what it really does is it goes after the idea that some people are above the law, or not just above the law, but above morality. That some people are allowed to cheat and steal and commit crimes if it's for a higher end. If it's for the idea that, oh, I'm going to make the world a better place. And that's what the character struggles with throughout the book. It's the idea of, hey, like, I want to commit a crime, I want to harm this person and steal her stuff, and I'm going to, that's fine. I'm allowed to do that because, one, I'm not going to make the same mistakes as the criminal or as other criminals, and I'm going to do it for a good purpose. That's the idea behind the main character. Like, I can commit a crime because I'm doing it for a higher purpose. This person that I'm going to commit a crime against, that I'm going to hurt, is a bad person. I'm a good person. She's just hoarding her money. I'm going to give the money to those that need it. That's the mentality behind it. And the whole point of the book is to say, no, like, that's wrong. That you can't have that mindset of people being above morality, that it's okay for me to be immoral if it's for some kind of higher good. And that's what he learns throughout the book. The crime is him committing the crime of killing a woman and killing a rich woman and taking her stuff. And the punishment is not the legal punishment for the crime, but it's his slow descent into just madness, into the idea that it's ruined him. It's ruined him because he's realized what he's done. And of course, it all goes downhill from there. But that's the entire book, is him struggling with this. I've done a terrible thing. And it does criticize that whole. It does go into, like, in a more philosophical manner, like these kind of novels do, on the idea of why you can't have that mentality, of why you can't be that person that's like, yeah, I can do this. Other people know, I know it's wrong, but I'm allowed to do this because it's for a higher purpose. Because I am one of these people that can take a broader view of society and do it for a higher good. That's the idea that Dostoevsky is attacking. So yes, I highly recommend it. I'm going to do like a shorter 3-minute review for this channel later. If you're not already subscribed, do that. But it's good. It's 700 pages, so I get it. It takes a while to read. If you want to maybe skim, read a bit, maybe skim up to the crime, and then maybe skim a bit further, and then read the rest. Okay, that's better compromise than not reading it at all. But yeah, I get it's a long book, but I do recommend. It's highly worth reading. Just that idea. I love that. It's again one of those books where once you get to the end, you're like, wow, that was incredible. That was a very good experience in the end. It was very worth reading. So next on my other list, what did I read? Quite a few other things. I read Against the State, which I did a review of, a book by Lou Rockwell. It's like an anarcho-capitalist book, and I'm not an ANCAP. I used to be an ANCAP, not so much anymore. I have kind of sympathies in that direction just because I like the people. There are a lot of ANCAPs that I really like. But I went that direction. Now I'm taking a step back, saying, okay, I got to have more information. But I read that book, and it was It was okay. It's a decent book. It's got a lot of good information in it. For example, I learned, this is interesting, I learned that the Nazis were the real soy boys. If you remember the soy boy meme that went around forever ago, I think Paul Joseph Watson really pushed it. The whole, like, oh, the far left like the leftists and their soy and that, and their love of soy, and the low testosterone and that. And it was a funny meme. I don't think you could take it much more seriously than that, but it was a good meme. And I just happened to, in this book, find out that apparently the soybean in Nazi Germany was known as the Nazi bean. That was something that the Third Reich really pushed heavily, was soybean production and how great soybeans were. So I just find that hilarious. That's just a neat throwback, or not throwback, a neat tidbit about history. The Nazis, they're the real soy boys. If that joke ever comes back, I'm using that. But next, so overall that book was kind of meh, because I hate books that don't cite their sources. I have trouble reading like newspapers and things where you're not expected to cite your sources. And if you've ever read one of my articles, again, beinglibertarian.com, I have a weekly column there. I try to cite as much as I possibly can. Things that I cite to the point where it's just enough to where it's not annoying. But I try to cite everything I possibly can, because I want to back up this stuff. I don't just want to say something. I want to show that, hey, even if it's just, if you want further reading, or if you don't believe me, here, look at this. So, and this book doesn't do that. It doesn't cite its sources, and that annoys me, because then, even though I like the author's Lou Rockwell, I like Lou Rockwell, I think he's a good dude. Even though I like Lou Rockwell, and I imagine the contents of the book are probably true, it's like, if you're not going to cite your sources, it's even if I never actually look at the source, the fact that you cited something makes me more likely to believe you. But if you're not going to cite your sources at all, it's not a red flag so much as it's just, I'm not going to cite anything from this book until I take the time to really research it further. And I'm busy. I'm not going to take the time to do. I did it with the soybean thing, but that was it. And that turned out to be true, so I guess that's one thing he said that definitely was true. And there's a lot of stuff in there that I knew was true, that I've heard before, and I've confirmed before, but it's like, if you're gonna write a book, just cite your sources. I love the books where there's certain books I love where I'll read a book, it's 600 pages long, 350 pages are the book, and the rest are like notes and additional graphs and charts and stuff, and further reading in that. Like Losing Ground by Charles Murray, that's one where the book is just full of sources. That's the kind of stuff I like, where a single note might be a whole essay just for further reading. That's the kind of books I like. Again, that doesn't make the book automatically better. The fact that it has a higher quantity of sources, it doesn't make it better, but it's a good sign. It's just a decent sign that, hey, like, it's they've at least backed up their research. What's the quality of the sources? You'll have to check that for yourself, but at the very least, they have something. But anyway, that's a wrap up on that. That's pretty much what I said in my review, but I extended it a bit longer. Next, a few interesting things. So, I forgot to put this up. I even brought up, I just downloaded quick pictures of the covers. Crime and Punishment. There's a free audiobook online. I just used the LibriVox version. So, and that's one where I have trouble listening to audiobooks because I tend to tune out. But this is one where I think it's interesting enough, and the version I listened to was good enough that you can really pay attention. So, yeah, we're going to close that down now because I went through that already. Next. This book. Interestingly enough, I'm going to zoom in here for you. Okay, is it not going to let me zoom in? Okay, maybe this isn't going to work now. Oh, jeez. Okay, so anyway, if you can see that, the book is called... Why isn't it letting me zoom in? It did that... Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. I did this earlier. I tested this. It's just a zoom thing before the stream went on. But... Anyways, so I read this book, oddly enough. A friend recommended this to me. This is not something I would normally read. This is something a friend recommended to me. It's by Rodney Stark, whose name I'd never heard of before. It's called Bearing False Witness, Debunking Centuries of Anti-Catholic History. Now, I'm not Catholic. I'm not religious. I'm not any of this stuff. I'm not a very religious person. I'm not anti-religion. I'm not it's not you. I don't have an opinion on it at the moment, or I should rephrase, before reading this book, I don't have much an opinion on it because I just don't have the knowledge there. I don't have the knowledge to judge it either way, and I'm not going to dismiss something until I understand it. And of course, something like a religion, that's a topic that would take decades to really become familiar with. So that's my general view of that at the moment. It's I will research it, I will get into it, and that's kind of what I'm starting to do now because of this book. So I read this. I did learn that Rodney Stark is, for one, he's not a Catholic, so I think that lends credence to that lends support to his book because there's no bias there, that he's not a Catholic. So if you're writing a book that ends up being pro-Catholic, then sure, there's good evidence there that you're not that biased if you are not one yourself. So good for him. I did learn he was part of the Independence Institute, which, as an organization, I gotta say the Independent Institute is one of those, if you've never heard of it before, it doesn't seem to actually accomplish that much. Maybe the numbers show me that I'm wrong, but overall it's just not... It just doesn't seem to be in the public eye that much. You don't hear much about it, but what I will say to their benefit is I like reading their material, and I like the people that are tied to it. That generally, if someone is tied to the Independent Institute, I think they're a well-researched person. In my experience, they're very intelligent and they put out good material. So the fact that he's tied to that is, I should say, good evidence. Although I will say the Independent Institute is American conservative / libertarian, you could say, classically liberal libertarian, that kind of thing. We'll call it classical liberal libertarian. So there is a bias there, and I think Rodney Stark is, if not a libertarian, at the very least a classical liberal, because that's what this book does. It essentially goes through, and if you were to give this an alternate title, it would be, hey, the Catholics are actually more classically liberal than you think. That's what it does, but it goes through history. It's a myth versus fact, kind of like Mythbusters style of, hey, here's a myth, here's what actually happened. And I like that. I enjoy that. And again, I'm not very religious, and I don't know much about religion, so I never even got brainwashed, as far as I know, into the anti-religious thinking, to the best of my knowledge. So a lot of these myths I had never actually heard of before. I didn't even know people believed them. But he does go through, and he provides evidence. He cites his sources, and I like how it's ruined my reading list. But what he does is he actually cites, at each chapter, he cites he has a box that he devotes entirely to, here's 4 or 5 historians that are very established in their field. They produced tons of stuff. They're very well respected. Here's the people I'm citing. And it's that's good, right? That's good. If you're going to do revisionist history, that's good that you're citing mainstream people. So you can say, hey, Like, this might not be something you've heard, but this is something that people that are experts in this field are backing me up on this. So that is good. That makes me want to trust him more, or that makes me more inclined to trust the contents of the book. So I think it is for the most part true. Again, this is coming from someone who has no expertise on this topic at all, but it did seem very well written, very well backed up, and it has caused me to look into it further. Like the idea, for one, Galileo, the story of Galileo is apparently not completely false, but mostly false. The idea that he was this guy standing up for science against the evil anti-science church kind of thing. Well, I mean, that's one of the few things in this book that I have heard before and did believe. He's like, yeah, it turns out Galileo was just kind of a jerk. At least if you believe the contents of this book, which he does cite his sources. He apparently argues that, hey, apparently Galileo was this dude that he had gone to a very prestigious university, and a lot of a lot of the ideas that led to his conclusions were already out there, and he learned them in the universities. And the idea wasn't, they weren't against him saying what he said. They were just saying, hey, we would like more evidence before you post it before you teach it as truth. Like, all you have to do is say, hey, this is a theory that we haven't completely proven yet. And he was like, no, screw you, this is true. And they're like, well, where's your evidence? He's like, I've got enough evidence. No, we need more evidence. I guess that was the big issue, where it was like, hey, just give us more evidence. And he was like, no, this is good enough. It seems to be more of a drama thing than an actual, at least that's according to the book. So I found that very interesting. And the last section was on economics, and it was very interesting. This is actually something I've read in an Austrian perspective on the history of economic thought by Rothbard. It's a 2-volume series that was actually meant to be 3 volumes, I believe. But it goes into the whole, hey, turns out there was loads of economic thought before Adam Smith. In fact, Rothbard intentionally, in his version, Volume 1 is called Economic Thought Before Adam Smith, just to say, hey, there's loads of stuff here, right? Like, Adam Smith wasn't that much of a revolutionary in terms of economics. In fact, Rothbard actually hated Adam Smith. He was like, yeah, Adam Smith is this dude that took ideas that already existed and mashed them up with other bad ideas that already existed. Like, he took good ideas, stole them from other people, like Cantillon, and rewrote them for his own and mixed them with bad ideas, is Rothbard's argument. But anyways, back to this book. The whole point of referencing the Austrian book was to say that volume lines up pretty much with what this book here says. So just to point that at least there's more than one book here that cites this, but it goes into the idea that, yeah, like if you look at what's his name? Jeez, Augustine, or Augustine, I believe his name is, Saint Augustine of Hippo. That he got some early economic insights, the idea of utility. He had the idea of utility down. He had the idea of like an early subjective theory of value stated, and we're talking he was around in the year 300. Like, this is some ancient stuff. And then Aquinas later on apparently developed that further and really got a lot of these. There is stuff on usury that's incorrect. Like, his argument against usury doesn't take into account time preference. But I'm told, I've never read Aquinas or Augustine, but that's next. These things are on my list to come up pretty soon, and hopefully, I don't think I can do a 3-minute review on either of their stuff. That's much longer. But apparently, they knew about all this stuff. Like, they didn't have it perfected. They didn't really there was something in the history of economics in the 1870s. Known as the Marginal Revolution. I think it was the 1870s, somewhere around there. Known as the Marginal Revolution. And this is something like the Austrians really brought about. This was like the beginning of the Austrian School of Economics, or at least the beginning of referring to that, like the beginning of Karl Menger and Baumwerk and these economists, where the idea of the Marginal Revolution, which was the idea of diminishing marginal utility. The idea that in economics, in reality, it's an economic term, but it's something we see in reality, that each person, each item rather, has a diminishing value. Because what we see is, let's say you have $1, or rather, instead of $1, 1 unit of currency. So, we'll say $10 or something. $10 can buy you food for a day, something like that. So, let's say you have one set of $10. You're going to use that on the most necessary thing, like food. Let's say you have another set of $10. You're going to use that on the second most necessary thing. Let's say you have a third set of $10. You're going to use that on the third most necessary thing, and so on and so forth. The idea is that because you spend your first bit of resources on the most important thing, each additional quantity you're going to spend on something that's less important and less valuable to you. Therefore, the idea of diminishing marginal utility, that each subsequent item you get, like each extra dollar, each extra unit of whatever, is less valuable than the one previous to it. Like when we go to a store. I did a video on this called what's it called, misconceptions of value, or what is value, or something like that. I go into this. The idea that if you have, like, when you go to a store and you start buying something, you don't buy the whole store out. You stop at some point because you realize, okay, this I value another item less than the money I currently have. It's that idea, if that makes sense. Anyway, I did a whole like half-hour video on this if you want to look for that, or if this doesn't make sense. But yes, it turns out that this was something, the idea of diminishing marginal utility was something that came around during the marginal revolution in the like late 1800s in economics. However, what they did was they fleshed it out into a full, like, coherent, established theory, into established concept. Subjective theory of value, law of diminishing marginal utility. They set these things in stone, fully fleshed out as like an economic treatise. Now, apparently, what Aquinas, like this, they didn't just come up with this stuff, right? They fleshed it out and clarified it. Turns out Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, they wrote about these things, oddly enough. They wrote about subjective theory of value, the idea that value can be determined, or value is determined by each individual. Like it's the people that give value to an object. Their subjective preferences that give value to an object, not like some kind of labor theory of value. Although I do know people attribute the labor theory of value to Aquinas. So again, I haven't read his stuff, so I can't say for sure if he agreed with both of those things, if he changed his mind, if he was inconsistent, if they misunderstood what he was saying. I don't know. But it is interesting, at least according to this book, like they had all this stuff. They didn't have it figured out, but they started on it. They had these really complicated topics that they were just starting to grasp. So it is incredible how you see these really complex ideas, like the early versions of them centuries ago, like millennia ago. So I found that interesting. I do highly recommend this book. I'm going to look for his other stuff. Again, I got too many books to read, so I'm not going to go out and buy his stuff. But I'll look for it. I'll look for it in used bookstores and that, and hopefully I find it. Unfortunately, all the good books aren't in used bookstores. It's just that kind of thing. We're generally, if a book is really good, people are going to throw it in a used bookstore. So, but I'll keep an eye out for it, and I would recommend you do too. This is a decent book. Next, what do we have next? I already forgot. Oh yes, so that led me into this. Let's see if I can actually zoom in this time. Hey, first try. Look at that. So I like Tom Woods. Wow, this is a really blurry picture. So I like Tom Woods. I'm a big fan of Tom Woods. He's one of my, of all the people that influenced my ideas, I would say, or influenced my view of things, Tom Woods is way up there. Definitely near the top. And Tom Woods is a Catholic, if you're not aware. He wrote a ton of Catholic books a while back, like years ago. And this is one of them. And I finally found a copy of it. I finally found a copy of his book for cheap. And I started reading through it. I'm only on chapter 2 right now, but this one's good as well. This is interesting. I'm actually kind of getting into the Catholic stuff. I'm not saying I'm converting. I'm not saying I'm now like Catholic's #1 fan now. I'm not saying any of that stuff, but I'm saying, hey, it's interesting how this has driven me in that direction now, that this is the stuff I'm looking into now. And I would recommend you do. This is very interesting to see. Again, I'm not trying to say, like, you should be a Catholic, or I'm not trying to say you should, or if you're a Catholic, you should support the free market, or that's not what this book is, and that's not what I'm saying, but it is interesting to see how, just the history of it, honestly, just the history of how so many of these ideas, so many of these things that I currently believe, that I believed for quite a while, that I've learned from libertarians, and the Austrian economics and that stuff. It's interesting to see how this stuff not necessarily I guess you could say originates, but has its foundation in, how about that? Has its foundation in stuff from hundreds of years ago, from early Western civilization. It's interesting to see that. Now, obviously, like everyone knows, most of Western ideas come from Aristotle. Everyone knows Aristotle, and to a lesser extent Plato. Like, he is the philosopher. We all know that he greatly influenced our ideas, but to a lesser extent, it's neat to see how many things that we know today that we don't think they really understood back then, but it's not that they understood it, it's that they were on the way there. They were so close. Like, they had these ideas in a more simplistic form, really there. So it's really interesting to see that. But it's also interesting to see just the idea of like the myth of the Renaissance, I guess you could say, or the myth of the Dark Ages, rather. That that's a better way to put it. The myth of the Dark Ages, where it's not like everything was bad, and then we had this Renaissance and the Enlightenment and all that. It's like, no, it turns out tons of stuff happened during that time. Like tons of stuff happened during these supposed Dark Ages. So I find that interesting. It's stuff that I'm not trying to tell everyone that this is stuff that is definitely correct or anything. I'm saying this is stuff I've read in these few books, and it's very eye-opening. It's very interesting that I'm definitely going to look into further. So if you guys have any books or any book recommendations on this, surely recommend them to me. I've already got enough books to last. To basically, if I just quit my job and stayed in my house all day and started reading and never slept, it would take about 10 years to get through all this stuff. But it's so I've definitely got tons to read, but this will be interesting. This will be I'm excited to see this more stuff. It has definitely brightened my view of Catholicism, I'll say, in that I wasn't, again, as I said, I wasn't anti-Catholic. For if anyone listening is Catholic, I wasn't anti-Catholic. I was more neutral because, again, like I know so little about them. But it is interesting to see that I was looking up other people too, and it's like, turns out so many people that I'm quite a fan of, that I've gotten ideas from, were Catholic. Like Andrew Napolitano to a lesser extent. He's someone that I'm generally a fan of, but don't rely on too much for information. But he seems like a cool dude. Apparently he's Catholic. Frederick Bastiat, who's like broken window fallacy guy. Like he's the seen and unseen guy. Like he came up with all these great ideas, and not just the ideas themselves, but the way of wording them, the way of making them easy to understand. Frederick Bastiat is apparently Catholic, so it's like, hey, that's cool, good for him. Lord Acton's a really cool dude. Is apparently Catholic, so that's cool. But that's about it. I think that's it for books. But I like these rambly streams. I like these rambly streams where I can just talk about them, even if even I don't know how many people are watching this. If it's 0 or if it's 1 or if it's 15, I have no idea. Or if it's 3,000. I just know that if it's whether it be like, I don't even look at the viewer number. I just like to talk. I just like to use these streams to ramble. And hopefully this wasn't a complete waste of people's time. But let me know if these are absolutely terrible. If people go back and listen to these and they're like, why did you do this? Let me know. Because this is intentionally rambly. I'm fully aware. Or not intentionally, but it is rambly. I'm fully aware. But the whole point of this is just to... I'm not constrained to the 3 minutes. Because I like the 3-minute reviews that they're 3 minutes. Because, again, the whole point is not to do something like this. The whole point is to get these things short and sweet and to the point. To give you a quick review about something. And I kind of like these book streams so I can just kind of throw out everything I've been listening to and learning during the recent times, and I will do more of these as I read more. But I know I just found that it's interesting. It's interesting to see what is going on next. That, hey, turns out now I'm reading books about Catholic Catholic learning or Catholic social teaching. It's called. It's like, never expected to go in that direction, but. It's one of those, like, my personal goal in life is to know everything about everything, and that might sound ridiculous, and it is. I am fully aware that I'm never going to accomplish that goal. I'm fully aware that I'm not even going to get 1% of the way there to accomplishing that goal, and I'm fully aware that there are other things in life, there are other goals in life than that one, to know everything, and I have other goals besides that, but that's generally my idea, is to get as not as close as possible, but again, it's not the destination, it's the journey, that kind of thing, the journey of knowledge, of learning about all these things. I just think that's cool, and I highly recommend it. Just like read more stuff, and you'll be amazed at how much information you'll learn. Like I've got a whole 90 series or 90 episodes, a 3-minute review, plenty of books there. And I have been thinking of maybe, I don't know what to do for 3-minute review number 100 because I know that's getting close. I'm not sure if I should do like a top 10. I don't know if I should go full BuzzFeed and do like top 10 books. Or I'm thinking maybe just do a live stream like this and just go through the last 100 and see if my views have changed on any of these, if I've changed my mind. See, not going through and watching the videos, but just going down the list of books and seeing just if anything's changed over time in my views. But I'm actually going to end it here. I think that's about it. I'm not going to waste anyone else's time. Thank you for watching, or listening, I guess. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. And Thanks for watching. How do I end the stream? I guess this button. End stream. Bye.